Do you ever wonder what is the proper knife to use for the task? Well, I'm going to show you some of the knives that we use daily to do our task. I'm going to show you some of the knives that we use daily to do our task. This is probably these are the most common knives you would probably have in your kitchen. There are more knives out there that do different types of things, but for the daily task, we would probably be using one of these knives. Over here we have, this is like a chef's knife, but it's a santoku. It's good for chopping along with what a traditional chef knife would do. We have a paring knife, we have a boning knife, steak knife, and a bread knife. These two knives I use fairly often, if not every day. This is called a chef's knife, a traditional chef's knife, and it really is an all-purpose knife. You would use this every day for chopping and dicing and mincing, and normally what you do is you hold your food down and then you use a rocking motion to cut through your food if you're going to make any of those particular cuts. This one is a lot like the traditional one that I showed you, but this is a santoku, and it's a Japanese type of knife. It's got a much bigger blade all the way across. It doesn't have that fine point, so this is really good for chopping if you need to. Really good chopping, and it rocks, but not as much as the chef's knife. But if, say, you're chopping a lot of things, like you want to cut slices of carrots, it's really good for that. Anything that's hard. I use this probably about as often as I use this one, and they're practically interchangeable in my book. Okay, let's talk bread knives. You always want to have a good bread knife because you don't always get loaves of bread that are already pre-cut. And if you notice with this knife, hopefully you can see it, there are little teeth, and that helps you to cut through the bread without tearing it up. You ever try to cut some bread with just a smooth blade? No teeth? And it kind of just chews apart your bread? That's why we don't use this type of knife. We use a bread knife, and it just slices right through. You saw right through the bread, and it keeps the bread intact without chewing up the sides and tearing your bread apart. Next we have a boning knife. This is for use on meat that you need to cut up, like maybe you're taking apart a chicken before you fry it. Well, this can get in between the bones so that you can cut those pieces apart. Anything that you need, anything that is meat that has a bone. The blade is much thinner and more flexible. You know, it can get into those corners. It just has more flex, and it's much easier to use than trying to take apart a piece of meat with a bone with a big blade. Next we have a paring knife. Another paring knife, you use it to pare our fruits and vegetables. What that means is to remove the core. So let's say you have an apple and you want to take the core out. When you hold the apple and you grip your knife, we want to grip it right. We want full control of our knife, so we pinch it right before the handle starts and we wrap our other fingers around it. So now we've got a good grip. You don't normally use this on a surface. You use it on your fruit or your vegetables, whatever you want to do to get a core out. And you're using more the tip than the whole blade. Last but not least, we have a steak knife. And you can see this has little teeth too. You can see it. And that's, of course, to cut through your steak, or say your chicken, your cooked steak or your cooked chicken when you're at the table. So personally, on your plate, let's say you have a steak and you cannot cut it with your fork. You certainly can't cut it with your fork and your table knife. So you would need a steak knife to cut through that. And you would just hold your piece of meat and you would cut through the meat. And that's what this is for. This is not used for every day like these knives are. This is used for at your plate setting with your meat that you want to take apart. I hope that helps you to understand what some of these knives are used for.